Hello everyone, welcome back for some more Let's Read Fate Requiem. So, I've done a bit of remodeling in the time. I got some coffee now. Very good, I love drinking coffee and reading a book. In addition, I've kind of scooched back in my seat, so things are going to look a bit different from now on. But hey, that's fine, we're still here for the same sort of stuff as before. You know, we're reading through this light novel, which, I mean, it's been a few days since I've read the prologue, but I've been thinking about it. I have been thinking about it. In fact, we were discussing in class the concepts of immortality and sort of the pros and cons, and I actually brought up, like, I've been reading this novel, and one part of it features these 3 different characters, and I brought them all up, and another student there says, hey, like, what's the name of the book? And I just sheepishly go, called Fate Requiem. It's based on an anime. Which, hey, sure, alright. You know what? Who knows? Maybe they'll learn to discover fate that way. Probably not. Anyways, let's get going here on chapter 1, because we read the prologue, right? But now we're moving into the actual first chapter, which I'm really excited for, because like I said, I've been enjoying this quite a bit, and you know, we had our sort of in media res start, right? And now it's time for us to actually get into the details of the situation, so let's get going. Chapter 1. Once upon a time, there was a great war. It happened long ago before I was born, and then it ended, and the world entered an age of peace. So the only thing I know about this world is that this is called the world after the Holy Grail War. So, yeah, okay, that makes sense why it would then be called that. If, yeah, there was a war, now we're good. In the modern age, each and every person held within their heart a tiny Holy Grail. Oh, okay, which was nothing more or less than that person's preordained destiny. And each and every person was capable of summoning a servant allotted them by fate, in accordance with the guidance of the Grail. Oh, wow, okay, this is interesting. Servants were an information resource by nature, accumulated throughout human history. Their souls were enshrined in the Throne of Heroes, a place which transcended the bounds of space and time. By downloading them from the throne, it was possible to manifest them in this world. The shape of the world changed greatly after the war. This town was born anew, reorganized into city units known collectively as Mosaic City. Among them was Akihabara, the maritime city, which I called home. Sea levels had risen dramatically as a result of global warming, and now the city was quite literally bordered on the ocean. Oh god, oh Japan is sinking. The Kanda River's name was nothing more than a vestige of the pre-war era. In reality, it was nothing more than a canal through which seawater flowed. This town was watched over by the Holy Grail, and not a day went by when its citizens did not partake of its bounties. Those survivors from before the war had been given the opportunity to obtain a Grail upon its conclusion, while those young enough to be born after the war, like Kareen, possessed one within their hearts from birth. The Grail had brought forth immortality to the masses. Oh my god, okay. The principal causes of death in the old world, biological factors such as aging, genetic degradation, infectious diseases, viruses, and malignant cancer had all been conquered. By expending command seals, one could even manipulate their biological age. In this city, one of humanity's oldest, dearest wishes, eternal youth, had been realized. Okay, so am I to get that this is basically what if Amakusa won? Kind of? Maybe? I don't know. Interesting. I know I'm not saying that's what it is. I'm not saying that that is what it is. What I'm saying is it's sort of like it. Okay. But I was different. I alone stood apart. I was the only citizen of the city who had not been granted a Holy Grail. I had been born into this new world, but I would age naturally and eventually die, with all the senselessness characteristic of the old, an irregularity born outside the sight of the Grail. That was what I was, me, Utsumi Erice. With no Holy Grail, I had no servant to contract with as my partner. Every once in a while, someone would be unable to stifle the urge to ask me how that felt. If it were up to me, I would laugh at them, and tell them that they'd never understand even if I tried to explain, but I've been chided no small number of times by my master for that. You would be remiss to be callous in your interaction with your social environment if you wish to live peacefully in this new world. So, for lack of anything else to say, I answered them like this. Imagine you were incredibly short-sighted to the point you could hardly see, but you were told you weren't allowed to wear glasses. Imagine being told you have to travel somewhere on foot while everyone else was allowed to use trains and buses. Imagine going somewhere you'd never been before, only to find out the navigation app on your smartphone was an unusable piece of junk. Oh, that sounds like hell. The question I had by far the most trouble with was the question of how I survived day-to-day life without command seals, which were one of the bounties of the Grail. On that point, no matter how thoroughly I tried to explain, most other people seemed to struggle to understand my situation any more than vaguely, and ultimately had no interest anyway. That was their ideal response, as far as I was concerned. I could find no fault with that. There were those who genuinely understood and responded with exaggerated surprise and sympathy. Some would offer me the usage of their command seals, assuring me with fawning pity that I would come to them if there was ever anything they could do for me. There were even a few so selflessly empathetic that they claimed to truly want to trade places with me, although always with some condition attached by which they could return things to normal if they so pleased. Every such encounter reminded me anew that I was nothing more than an amusement to them, a means of flattering their own altruistic sensibilities, and of relieving their boredom for a little while. Akihabara was a labyrinth in 3 dimensions, not just 2. In a block nestled a comfortable distance from the downtown area on the middle stratum, bordering a natural public park, stood a multi-story building housing a collection of public service facilities. Contained on one floor of this building was the classroom I frequented. I had arrived slightly late for the start time, and hurriedly took my seat. The wide, fan-shaped room was almost devoid of students. This was decidedly not a facility for compulsory education. It offered the people at large educational lecture courses aimed at fostering lifelong learning. Citizens of all ages took the course, and attending every single lecture was virtually unheard of. Consequently, I was known as something of an eccentric. The people here knew nothing of the Battle of Immortals that occurred last night. Those kinds of incidents never made the news. Well then, it was time for pre-war human history. That was the name of the subject I was taking. Unfortunately, it could hardly have been called the most popular subject. The content of lectures was much more closer to trivia than education. The main goal of pre-war human history comprised learning about the human race's greatest triumphs and blunders in the world of the past. It was, well, to put it bluntly, dry. In the first place, Akihabara was Mosaic City's premier resort. Students who were sincerely striving to learn, or families concerned with the proper education of their children, would simply up and leave for another district. I had an inclination that this space really only existed to entertain the interests of the lecturer at the front of the hall. Oh my god, my master, Miss Fujimura. Oh my god, is it Taiga? Is it Taiga? Is it gonna be another Fujimura? Or is it straight up Taiga? If it is, this is amazing. Okay. Oh, looks like that girl's here again. I cast a quick glance out over... we have a switch, okay. I cast a quick glance out over the lecture theater from my usual perch at the back. Oh, no, never mind. A small, familiar figure that was sat in the very front row, concentrating intently on the lecture. She had come again today. As a rule, I never saw students younger than myself attending these lectures, so I had stuck in my memory. She was a pale child, short in stature, perhaps old enough to be at the upper end of elementary school. Her voice and attitude during the occasions that she posed questions to the lecturer had given me the impression that she was female, but there was no guarantee. All kinds of people lived in the city. It was, of course, the current year. Her had was... okay. Her hood? I think that's supposed to be her hood. Her hood was invariably pulled down low over her face. Her eyes were covered by her bangs, so I couldn't see her face clearly. I'd never engaged her in conversation. I didn't know her name. She appeared in lectures once a month or so. I felt a distinct disconnect between her keen attitude in lectures and her abysmal attendance rate. Today, her standing record for youngest lecture attendee had been broken. The new champion was none other than my companion. The stray servant I had taken in last night, the golden-haired child. He was at least sitting in his seat for now without making a fuss, but he was fidgeting constantly, rocking his body to and fro, sometimes lying down as though to try to savor the feeling of the cool wood of the chair. Or so I was thinking, before he suddenly turned to peer into my face, obstructing my view of my tablet. You think you're a cat or something? Cat? Maybe you're more of a dog, huh? Your hair's all floofy. Dog? Yeah, dog. You know, woof woof. I know dogs. Oh, really? I'm glad for... What the hell do you think you're doing? He scrambled up onto the seat of his chair, planted both his hands on the desk, and began to howl loud and proud. Ow, 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 ow. Oh boy. Oh, that's cringe. Oof. Oh. He finished his surprisingly accurate rendition, flashing a beaming smile. I sat for a moment in silent astonishment, and might perhaps have thought for a moment that it was a little endearing, although this really wasn't the time for that. Hey, stop that. Get down from there. Give me a break. I was just about to give you credit for at least not being as loud as Kareen, and you go and pull this. The other attendees were turning back to look at us, searching for the source of the noise. I'm sorry. We'll be quiet. I'm really sorry. My master had stopped giving her lecture and was cocking her head at us. The girl in the front row was looking too. If looks could kill, the glare boring into me from beneath her bangs would have dropped me stone dead. Although I couldn't exactly blame her for getting so annoyed at someone bringing this commotion into a classroom. Yes, miss, I'm so terribly sorry. I won't do it again. What did I do to deserve this? I had no way of knowing how to handle a young child like this boy in the first place. But that said, I couldn't have possibly left him behind in my apartment by himself. And I had thought to myself that I might learn something about him if I brought him here. Don't dogs say bow wow in English anyway? Bo-ro. Not even close. Must be nice to be able to mimic things like that, huh? Oh boy. Starting to get the feeling I'm not going to be learning much from today's lecture. I rested my head on my hand and pouted, gazing idly at the young boy's angelic face out of the corner of my eye. Cast my mind back through the memories of my baptism last night. It had happened on the previous evening, after I was fished from the riverbed by Kareen and Kyoyu on the wharf. To cut a long story short, I decided to take the boy back to my apartment and put him up for the night, still none the wiser about who he was or where he had come from. I'd been living on my own since parting ways with my grandmother. In a quiet corner of Akihabara, there was a small, depopulated district that most people avoided. Before the war, it had comprised a collection of multi-purpose buildings crammed to bursting with shops, but they had all been abandoned after the Grail's large-scale restructuring of the city. My apartment consisted of a room in one such building. The inside of the room was decorated in Victorian style. Each inch of floor was covered by wooden floorboards, and its antique interior had been preserved unaltered. Apparently, it was originally housed some kind of dubious culinary establishment known as a maid cafe. Oh my god, she lives in a maid cafe. That's rad. My apartment wasn't exactly designed for ease of living, but it was furnished with a proper bathroom and bedroom, and was more than sufficient for one person to live in comfortably. It even had a veranda, albeit a small one. From the window of my bedroom, I could gaze out over a small vertical slice of ocean hemmed in by the surrounding buildings. My opportunities to invite another person back to this humble abode were rare. Considering my job, the risks involved in freely letting others know where I lived were far too high. The only reason I had brought this child back with me was that it would have been too irresponsible to leave him to his own devices. I didn't even... What? That is the wrong page. 46? 47, that's weird. That's weird. Okay, it's fine. Thankfully, easy page numbers, so I can know when that happens. I didn't even know who his contractor was. To have allowed him to freely roam around the town would have been unthinkable. He might have even manifested in the form of an innocent child, but that only set me more on edge. I had allowed myself to be disarmed by a target's outward appearance before in a previous job, and I made a grave mistake because of it. A servant I had believed nothing more than an angelic young boy, like purity itself sculpted in alabaster, had harvested a terrible darkness. The Avenger, Louis the 17th. Who? I'm gonna Google. Who is Louis the 17th? I'm Googling him. Louis the 17th was the son of Marie Antoinette. Oh. Oh, that's interesting. That Marie Antoinette's son would be an Avenger. Okay, that's interesting. The incident that arose around the particular monstrosity ultimately claimed not only life as master, but those of a great number of innocents as well. At that time, I had not fully graduated from childhood. Louis and I had been similar in stature, and I thought we could have been good friends. In the end, however, my friendship and goodwill had been used and turned against me. That incident was not one I would easily forget. There was another reason that I had brought this stray child back with me. I've been driven to my wits' end in another sense. Frankly speaking, I could not take it anymore. The rank stench that permeated the both of us had become unbearable, and I could not bear to go another minute without washing it off. The culprit was the oil slick near the quay that I've had the ill fortune to be dragged through when I was fished out of the Canada River. Petroleum-based waste oil that had leaked from one of the boats that was moored in the harbor. I hardly had the time to worry about that sort of thing immediately after being deposited on the wharf. Now that I returned to my senses, the discomfort was driving me to distraction. Pouring water over myself or wiping myself down with paper towels would do nothing to remove this. I needed a proper bath. I'd been stopped by a worried Kareen when I tried to totter my way home, still bearing a serious wound that I had no right to have recovered from so quickly. She had only seen me off after I explained about the charms and such I kept in my house. She was easygoing like that. I had tried to invite her to stay the night here, but she had breezily turned me down, saying she had a friend in the vicinity who would put her up for the night. Just double-checking page numbers. Kareen's social connections remained as mysterious to me as ever, although she gave me a rueful smile, saying her family would be angry with her for returning home the following morning. In any case, I had finally returned home, and I could allow myself to relax a little. I looked the boy over once more, this time with the aid of my apartment's artificial lights. Hold on, hey, no, wait, don't just go in, just stand here for a minute. I grabbed him by his sodden scarf and yanked him back, prompting a visible sulk. Sorry. Though he did possess emotions and the capacity to appeal to them. That'd be useful at least. Both of us looked ridiculous, soaked from head to toe and glistening with oil. I was at least wearing swimwear and a windbreaker in place of my ordinary clothes, but his lot was a much more miserable one. I could feel my memories of the unearthly spectacle I'd witnessed below the surface of the water growing more distant by the minute. Alrighty. Pulled myself together and sank to one knee in the entranceway, looking over the child once more from top to toe. He at least appeared to be 8, maybe 9 years old. He was Caucasian, with the pale features similar to Scandinavian climes. Although given that servants were as much a concept as they were genetics, any attempt to determine their race was close to meaningless. That's interesting. Servants were as much a concept as they were genetics. What does that mean? Does that mean that, like, are you trying to insinuate that, like, Saber wouldn't look Caucasian? Is that what we're going with? Like, it's not, like, it doesn't actually matter? I don't know. That's interesting. That's interesting for sure. His hair was a pale blonde, almost white, and had been left to grow freely. His scarf was sodden and hung limp around his neck. Maybe it was a muffler? Well, it wasn't as though it mattered. It was composed of fabric knitted from some strange, gaudy material. It was hard to say if it was actual gold or just extremely intricate needlework. His clothing looked to be made out of cotton and had a simple design reminiscent of a Greek-style tunic. He had a small embroidered design on his chest, which I made note of as a potentially important clue. His belt and shoes were made of the same material as his scarf. The heels of the latter had a strange design. They were tapered towards the back like spurs for a riding horse. Oh, interesting. I could have taken this as an indication that in life he had been some sort of knight, but nothing about him gave me that impression, nothing else rather. He's nothing like any of the other saber or rider-class servants I've seen. His pale blue eyes stared back at me questioningly as I scrutinized him. I was seized by a sudden rush of curiosity. Hey, do you think you could tell me where you came from? He slowly lifted an arm to point towards the ceiling. From the sky? From heaven? You don't mean the moon, do you? He shook his head at all of them. I've come from somewhere very far away. All servants have. Really? I must have found something amusing because his face blossomed into a smile and giggled. I was relieved at the unexpected ease with which I was able to communicate with him, although it seemed he was still struggling to understand what I was saying. His first words had been in halting English, but from the way he appeared to be listening in on our conversation between me and Karina, I would venture that he at least understood our language. If he was a servant who had been summoned legitimately, he would have been granted a bare minimum of common knowledge about the modern era by the Grail, as well as the linguistic capabilities necessary to express himself to others naturally. However, I was trying to determine his true name. This was only serving to impede my search. As I questioned him, I produced a pair of scissors and carefully snipped a 5mm length of thread from the back of his tunic, which I deposited in a Ziploc sample bag. Would you mind letting me take one of your hairs as well? Looked like he was giving me the okay. He did as I asked without resisting, and as I did, he asked me a question. Have you come from somewhere far away like me, Eri? Don't call me that. Did you get that from Karine? Alright, listen, I'm not Eri, I'm not Old Man Eri, and I'm not Eripe. I'm Erice. Utsumi Erice. He remained staring at me, giving no indication whether or not he'd understood. His reaction was a little dispiriting, but I continued anyway. If I kept talking, I might be able to glean something. It's not really that far away, really. I was born in Shinjuku. I'm 14 now, so I guess you call me a middle schooler, but I don't usually go to school anyway. What's a school? A school it's where you go to learn. It's a big building where lots of children go, or at least that's what I hear it was like before the war. They've changed a lot since then. You don't go to school, Eri? I told you to call me Erice, and I don't need to. I'm passing academic evaluations and I'm getting the credit I need from extracurricular courses, and I show up for health inspections and such. You don't want to go to school, do you? I grit my teeth. He'd hit the nail on the head. He was annoyingly good at that. It's not a matter of whether I want to go or not. I have important things to do. You're alone. He cocked his head, then broke out another smile. Just like me. I suppressed my irritation silently as I tapped at my tablet. I was just trying to search for the symbol embroidered on its chest, but nothing was coming up. Just in case, I tried accessing the city network, but no one had registered any missing servants. Though it wasn't, as that was a frequent occurrence anyway. I could ask my master about any information that might be suppressed on a public level, but I could hardly go blithely to her cap in hand, not after I tried to hide from her that I disobeyed her orders and let Kundry go. Even so, there was one theory that as to his identity that I managed to come up with. Spurred on by that, I decided to bite the bullet. So, which servant are you? Huh? He tilted his head in confusion. Was he trying to play dumb? It didn't look like an act at any rate. It seemed that somehow he really didn't understand the concept of a servant. Was that even possible? I'm asking about your true name, although your nickname will do if it's better known. Once, the servants would not have revealed their true name lightly, but that was before the war. In the modern world, it had become more a question of personal privacy. No small number of servants had origins that could complicate life in Mosaic City if they had been known to others, and the degree of discretion necessary might also change depending on the relationship with their master. This boy likely wouldn't talk about his true name if his unknown master did not wish it, and all the more if he didn't have one at all. Your name, I said. Tell me your name. Name? That's right, your name. Don't you know it? Huh? Don't I... You mean my name? It was supposed to be me asking the questions here. I was starting to feel like if I just allowed this wide-eyed child to talk at his own pace, I would be the one to end up being profiled. Abruptly, he opened his mouth again. There's something I lost. You lost? What did you lose? I don't know. Oh, this is so accurate, talking to a child. I heaved a sigh. At the same moment, a sharp stench once more pricked at my nostrils. Sounds like you're suffering from memory loss. I think things like that can happen after summoning. Well, anyway, there's nothing we can do for now, and I'm about at my wit's end. So right now, I'm gonna have a shower. I'll let you use the bathroom too. So go on ahead. Shower? A shower. You know, like a bath. Bath? Wait, you really don't know? Don't tell me you don't even know what a shower is. Hang on, have you ever had a wash? He shook his head. Apparently he had never experienced a bath. Although even if he hadn't, surely the idea itself fell under common knowledge. Do your job, Holy Grail. For as long as I'd lived there, my bathroom had been rather chic. It had a French-style interior and was easily wide enough for 2 people. The star of the show was a shallow enamel bathtub pulled straight from a Western movie. Incidentally, the bedroom was decorated in equally charming fashion and was the biggest reason I chose this apartment. The design was uncharacteristically luxurious for a department store coffee shop. Either the owner had extremely specific tastes, or from the beginning, this building had been designed with less than wholesome purposes in mind. Probably the latter. Not that that had anything to do with me. I was nothing but a grateful beneficiary. But it did mean one more thing for Kareen to tease me about. I gritted my teeth and let the boy led the boy by hand to the bathroom. He was still dawdling, unsure as to what's going on. I had him take off his clothes and made him stand in the dressing room. Then I set to filling the bathtub, removing my own dirty clothes as I did. He's just a kid. What's there to be embarrassed about? Nothing. That's right, nothing at all. There was still an outside chance that he would turn out to have the mind of a middle-aged man, but I'd cross that bridge if I came to it. Oh my god, I never even would have thought about that. Suppose I better put my swimsuit into ouch! Agony lanced through me as I twisted my body the wrong way. I retreated the injury to my abdomen and covered it with a water-resistant patch. It was still undergoing accelerated recovery, and it was warm to the touch. The wound was serious enough that the treatment methods of the past, a leukemic shock and acute inflammation, would have been unavoidable. But this new world had conquered death itself, and treatment for injuries and accidents had not been overlooked on the way. Many technologies had been developed during the war, and now I reap the benefits. It looks like it hurts. Well, maybe a little. His eyes were drawn to the scar on my ear, and he screwed up his face. It isn't nice, is it? Every thorn prick makes its own holes. You said it. Was he worrying that I might have been left with a scar in his... Was he worrying that I might have been left with a scar in his own way? So he was quite the gentleman. But it's okay. Koyu patched it up for me, so it'll heal with time. For my part, I carefully looked at his naked body up and down once more. Wait, is that 54? Yeah, okay, just checking. This was a vital step in my investigation, and thus an entirely proper and lawful act. He was definitely a boy, yep. Once I had painstakingly washed away the cause of the stench, I finally entered the bathtub, along with the boy who was trying to escape at any opportunity. It's hot. That's what's good about it. Ordinary servants love to take baths. They're very happy to get in. There are even some who have baths in their noble phantasms. There's one who summons this great big bath chamber called Termi di Caracalla. I'm gonna bet that guy is a Thermi creator. I'm definitely not watching that Netflix anime about the Roman guy who creates baths and then goes to Japan. And by not, I mean I absolutely am. I want to get out. He was pulling a very sullen expression, but at least he was being obedient. I don't see any scars on him. His muscle and weight don't seem any different from a normal child's either. I find it very hard to believe that he might have been knight summoned in their youth. But when he said he didn't know what a bath was, the first thing I'd suspected was child abuse. Heroic spirits who had come from such unhappy backgrounds were too numerous to count. But he showed no sign of having received that treatment, at least not outwardly. My confidence in my hypothesis was growing stronger, and I decided to put it to the test. I stretched out from the bathtub. With the steam-clouded mirror as my canvas, I drew a picture of a hat with my fingertip. It was a crude sketch of an old-fashioned, wide-brimmed men's hat with a slightly indented top as seen from the side. Hey, can you tell me what this is? I asked him hesitantly, my chest pounding nervously. It only took a brief glance at the picture before he answered. It's a snake. I started. For a moment, I was at a loss for words. It looks like it's eaten something big. He'd answered my question perfectly. It scares me a little. Droplets fell from his body as he shivered and turned away. I didn't even imagine that he would show such a violent reaction. I quickly wiped away the picture on the mirror and found myself patting his head to try and reassure him. I could feel the slickness of his wet hair and the warmth of his body through my palm. What about B612? Or maybe you call it B612. 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 Yes, he nodded in answer. no hesitation. You know it? It's a planet, isn't it? But there's no one there. I was silent for a moment. That's right, it's a planet, of course it is. I see, so there's no one there, but I think I might know your true name now. B612 was the name of an asteroid that orbited the solar system. It's not remarkable in any way, save for the fact that it had been discovered by a Japanese national. It would hardly be included in the common knowledge of the Holy Grail bestowed upon servants, but the asteroid was named for a novella from a foreign... Oh my god. Wait, no way. A novella from a foreign country, and the title of the novella was Le Petit Prince. I taught kids about that in French. On a sudden impulse, I embraced him. In the bathtub, I wrapped my arms around his narrow shoulders from behind and squeezed him tight. It was not to break him. It was not to hurt him. If only you had been my servant. He showed no sign of answering me. Before entering the bathtub, as I was washing myself, I checked everywhere, desperately. I'd searched to see if command seals, the proof of a contract with a servant, had appeared anywhere on my body. I had strained my eyes in the mirror, checking my back beneath the translucent medical patch, even the soles of my feet. Oh my god, do some of them get the seals on their feet? But they were nowhere to be seen. Then, I was no one's master. Could not have made any contract with this boy through the Grail. I was just the Reaper, the same as I'd always been. In that case, what had that sense of foreboding been? What had that trembling been in my chest? That sense that something had begun that would change my life forever. In the end, it had all just been my own wishful thinking. Oh. He's so sad. He doesn't like water. After the bath, we retired to my living-cum-dining room. Please don't use that phrase. Oh my god, I know what you're saying, but please don't use that phrasing. Please don't use that phrasing. Where a mahogany table had stood ever since the place was a cafe. The boy sat in the chair, working through a lasagna... Lasang? Am I crazy? Is that a... Hold up. Did I... Is that how lasagna is spelt? Oh my god. I always thought it ended with an A. I guess I'm the stupid one. Anyways, lasagna that I had frozen, microwaved from frozen. I was recording the day's events, tablet in hand and towel around my head, and I was blushing as red as his bolognese sauce. I felt incredibly embarrassed. The boy hadn't even yet come of age, but I had suddenly embraced him, whispering something that almost felt like a confession of love, and then ended up crying. Well, naked, no less. Don't worry, you're just having a moment. It's fine. His only response, after a while had passed, had been to furrow his eyebrows and complain it's hot. Is that good? I asked. It tastes. It tastes. It sure does. Really? Sounds great. The samples I'd taken earlier were on the table. Both contents of the Ziploc bag had vanished just as I expected. Separated from his body, his hair and the thread from his tunic had ceased to exist in their pseudo-physical form and had reverted being part of his mana. In other words, his body and clothes he wore were woven from the stuff. Oh my god, that's very interesting. That's very interesting. So you're saying if you took a servant's stuff away from them for long enough, they would just That's cool world building. I like that. I love learning about stuff like this for the characters where it's like things you would never know. Like, what if you snipped off Saber's hair? It would disappear, right? I like that. Let's see. That made for strong evidence that he was a servant, but it was unneeded, because an easier way to tell was right before my eyes. The clothes I had left on the floor of the dressing room had returned to a clean, dry state. The scarf he wore around his neck floated freely with no regards for the laws of physics. Even while he was eating, it fluttered gently, as though rising upon the wind. Needless to say, there was no wind inside my apartment. He couldn't be Simoon, could he? The poison wind? I've only heard that term as an attack in games. The night had grown late, and I wrestled with the sleepiness and exhaustion that had assailed me as I stared at my tablet. I thought back to the words I had exchanged with Flying Dutchman, Captain Van der Decken. every word of the warning he had given me lay heavy on my breast. Until it became clear that our enemy was the Mad Queen, he had maintained a policy of non-interference, and only once had he commented on my methods. He had been cursed by a devil of the ocean. My lot was not too dissimilar, for I too was cursed and possessed by evil spirits. Living my life beyond the sight of the Grail, I might as well have been a naked offering to them. But that was also the reason that I had lasted as long as I had in this job. I had let my guard down, and I had allowed myself to believe that Captain Vanderdecken and I might have been able to find an understanding as bearers of the same fate, but he had seen through those naive expectations and had roughly spurned my advances. I've grown to feel the joy in the act of slaying of servants under the pretense of executing the authority of the city. Though you think yourself the master of your specters, they in turn use you. He was telling me in a roundabout way that I was intoxicated by the idea of being a superhero, that I would, that what I had believed to be pride was in fact conceit. Someday Erice will call forth a great evil, and when that time comes, that which you have clung to so dearly will instead force you to your knees. Unable to accept his words and fiercely ashamed, I retorted with some frivolous argument, although I could admit now it had just been something I cooked up to make myself feel better. At the time, I had thought he was just trying to put me in my place. Thinking back on it now, his words might have been as much in reproach of himself as they had been for me. His relationship with his contractor, Erice, equal in spite of being master and servant, spoke more eloquently of his sincerity than words ever could. Are you paying attention, Erice? I was brought out of my reverie by my master's polite chiding. You seem very tired. Perhaps it would be for the best if you took a moment to rest in the break room. I can prepare the lecture material for your perusal later if you'd like. Wait, did we miss something? Oh no, we just cut ahead now to in school. Okay. I let out a whimper. This was embarrassing. My second disgrace this morning. I shook my head vigorously. My master nodded and recommended the lecture. I'm looking down and I see something. I recommended lecture in a soft voice. Recommenced, rather. Her name was Karen Fujimura. Oh my god. Okay, what page are we on? We're on page 60. I'm going back up to the top here. That's her. Karen Fujimura. Oh my god. We don't have art of her, huh? I'm sure we'll get there after. Brick, Karen Fujimura. Bro, I love it when they do this. They just mix characters. Oh, it's so good. Oh, what's not good is getting back to where I was. Let's see here. Okay, we're on page 58. No. Here we go. Her name was Karen Fujimura. She was the lecturer responsible for this class and also my master. I'd known for her as long as I could walk. Outwardly, she appeared to be in her 20s. She had light amber eyes and wavy pale gray hair that cascaded down to the small of her back. Her body combined a slender build with voluptuous Hispanic curves. Oh my god. That sounds so attractive. But most notable, however, was her impeccable sense of style. Nobody else could come close to its audacity. Today, too, she looked as sharp as a knife. Or at least I thought so. But waxing lyrical on the subject only seemed to earn me pained smiles from Karine and the others. Well, it wasn't as though I cared anyway. If I was the only one who could understand the magnificence, so be it. The boy, who had been quiet at my side for a long time, had begun focusing on my master when she had spoke to me. Now he turned his gaze to the skirt of my school uniform, then to his own trousers and cocked his head. He turned his head to make one more pass, carefully comparing, then spoke with some conviction. She isn't wearing anything down there. That she isn't. My master really was incredible. Okay. It was not on account of her position as lecturer that I called Karen Fujimura my master, nor was it on account of her being my fashion role model. She was inhuman in every way, and not in the sense of being part of the new post-war humanity. Oh, she was an artificial intelligence, an AI. Huh. Okay. Okay, so straight up. Okay, I just started the Olympus Lost Belt, in grand order, and the connections that I'm seeing here between some of the stuff there and some of the stuff here is actually super cool. More precisely, she was Municipal Administrator AI tasked with the management of the Akihabara Award, a human interface that allowed the Grail to communicate directly with the people of the city. A hybrid intelligence, the most valuable in the city. A fusion, born of the fusion of summoning magecraft, model on the kind that called forth heroic spirits, and cutting-edge information technology. Such was the true nature of Karen Fujimura. Oh, this is so cool. Oh, I really like this. Miss Fujimura's lecture on pre-war human history continued. Today's topic was the history and profiles of the great pioneers, those brave adventurers who sailed west on crude wooden ships, carving the path to unknown lands, those bold explorers who discovered, or rediscovered, the distant New World and secured the shipping routes that would become the lifeblood of global civilization. She spoke of Eric the Red, who crossed from Europe to Greenland and settled there, of his son, Leif Erikson, who made landfall in the northeast of North America and named it Vinland, of the roots of the Polynesians, who propagated across the islands of the South Pacific in canoes little better than rafts, and who sometimes set adrift by rogue currents to journey thousands of kilometers, of Christopher Columbus, who was a loser, the conqueror who never lost one sight of his dream, who sailed to the farthest reaches of the Western Sea aboard the legendary Santa Maria, and there rediscovered the New World, of Vasco da Gama, who crossed the Cape of Good Hope and pioneered the Indian trade route, of the Cape itself, the southern tip of the African continent, and one of the great perils of the Age of Discovery, where Captain Vanderdecken's Dutch galleon met its fate around the rocks. She told of Ferdinand Magellan, whose vessels first circumnavigated the world. Although he perished before the completion of his journey, his fleet proclaimed to the world beyond all doubt that the earth was not flat but round. Through him, the people came to know that the world they lived on was just one more celestial body like the moon or Mars, forging silently onwards through the globe. And here too was the first captain to circumnavigate the globe, Francis Drake, the privateer. Ah, here was the magnificent Golden Hind. I'd already been absorbed in the lecture, but here my excitement reached its zenith, my mind filling with daydreams of open sea. I love how they specifically don't say the gender of Francis Drake here. From servants who had lived through the same era, I heard tales that Drake, the admiral who broke the back of the invincible Spanish Armada, oh, never mind, had in truth been a woman more gallant than any man. Never mind. Okay, cool. Oh, this is cool. Drake's actually part of the story. That's awesome. That the man who set, okay. I had heard tales that Drake, the admiral who broke the back of the invincible Spanish Armada, had in truth been a woman more gallant than any man. That the man who set the sun had, in fact, been the woman who set the sun. I personally found them impossible to believe, and I've also heard them refuted by other pirate servants. Stories like that ain't nothing more than piss in the wind, girlie. Drake was a man, sure as my beard is long. Okay. No, that's Blackbeard saying that 100%, and he's just salty. Drake was, it was a common enough story when it came to servants. Some age of history had placed little importance on gender distinctions. Conversely, in others, women had been so oppressed that they could only perform heroic deeds while disguised in men's clothing. Such confusion was liable to muddy historical records. Oh, I love that they're addressing this. Even if Drake had been female, it would do nothing to tarnish the glory of her legend. My enriching study time was now approaching its end, although I had struggled to focus on all the contents of the lecture. I'd like to give a brief introduction to one final figure, an American man whose one small step signified a giant leap for mankind. The screen changed in sync with Miss Fujimura's commentary, now displayed a world of extreme contrasts, a sea of gray regolith and the dark vacuum of space. Within the shadow thrown by a lunar lander, a figure in a spacesuit descended a ladder to stand upon the moon's surface. This was the first man to stand on the surface of the moon. He too counts among the great pioneers of the human race. A single voice arose, quavering not with wonder but with astonishment. A human went to the moon? A living human? The source of the voice was none other than the young girl in the front row. Indeed, it would be 56 years before the modern day. 3 astronauts ventured to the moon, and 2 among them descended to walk upon its surface. More than half a century ago? there weren't even control units back then capable of calculating orbital trajectories. There were. Another video resource flashed onto the screen. This time it showed a bulky copper box that must have weighed dozens of kilograms and a small keyboard. The commentary indicated that this was the Apollo spaceship's guidance computer. Single-core 8-bit, a most splendid computer to be mounted in the lunar lander. It had likely had less than 1/10,000th the processing power of the smartphones you all had in your pockets, and yet it had enough to guide the lander by autopilot, even though human error necessitated its rebooting just prior to landing. Miss Fujimura sounded almost triumphant. There had been a strange change in her expression, although it was so slight I doubted anyone but me would have a chance at noticing. Perhaps for an AI, it was a point of pride to be able to talk about the vital contribution a computer made to one of humanity's most historic achievements. No, that's not it. She was delighting in the shock her student was experiencing from her first contact with the knowledge. Okay, no, but for real, this is a real thing. As a teacher, when a student has no idea about a concept and you shock their world with it, oh god, it's so good. Oh, to see them break down and not understand this brand new thing that they never knew is now a thing. Oh, it's so good. Oh, it's so good. I love it. I love it. Okay. She was reveling in it. The girl retracted her body and sat back down in her seat, fuming. That's irresponsible. It's reckless. Indeed it was. It was one of the most reckless ventures in human history, and precious lives were lost along the way. That's all the more reason it could have never happened. Oh god, is she a truther? Is she a moon landing truther? As though scoffing at our worries from across the ages, the portly figure of the spaceman upon the screen began to moonwalk, gleefully bounding across the moon's surface. He was humming to himself merrily like some shameless delinquent. Are we really going after him right now? Rather carefree, isn't he? One would never think only a thin spacesuit separated him from the zero-pressure vacuum and hellish 110-degree temperatures outside. My master smiled faintly as she expressed her admiration for the men in the video. Even when they raced their moon buggies across the lunar plain, they were rough and careless, as though they were driving go-karts at some amusement park. The girl at the front returned to gazing at the video, a flabbergasted expression on her face. I couldn't help but bursting out in laughter. Her shoulders trembled a little. I picked an awful time. The Great Pioneers installment concluded by saying that although the human race had raised its flag in one great unknown after another, first the new world beyond the seas, then the distant skies, and finally the void of space, landing a group of carefree delinquents on the surface of the moon had marked the end of their exploits. Not once since had they set their sights any farther. The Apollo generation's dream of a grand conquest of the stars remained a dream to this day. Mars, Venus, and the outer space beyond the solar system remained unknown to the print of a human boot. I wonder if perhaps the human race had, somewhere along its way, lost sight of something incredibly precious. I mean, now that you live forever, that gets rid of one of the problems. I wonder if perhaps someday there might rise once again on the edge of the farthest frontier someone worthy of being called a hero, someone who would lead mankind forth once more towards a new world. Oh my god, is this where this story is gonna go? Oh, that's pretty good. Hey, there you are, Airy Pie. Want to grab some food? Karine burst into the classroom just as the lecture had ended. She must have guessed where I'd been. I had thought she would have returned home after the events of last night, but she must have remained in Akihabara. Oh, it's you, Karine. I'll hold off for now. I've still got some things I need to do. Hasn't your class just wrapped up? Yeah, well, but I'm not talking about class. Ah, the shrimp's tagging along. Good. You put some proper breakfast in him, right? What's he been eating? Cereal and some water. Please don't tell me he's putting it together. Please don't tell me you're putting it together. That sucks. Oh, ouch. You know that's child abuse, right? Like, I should probably be calling a social worker about now. Just give it a rest, jeez. I'd been back to my apartment in the past few days and my reserves have expired, so I'd ended up with very little by way of food. I hadn't so much as forced cereal and water on him as he noticed I hadn't so much as forced cereal and water on him as noticed his interest in the food I was hurriedly shoveling down and shared a little. Servants don't typically require meals in the usual sense, but in the post-war world where they become commonplace, more care was paid to improving their quality of life. There are even some citizens group that insisted they had a right to live the same as humans. In my view, servants were fundamentally inhuman existences, and I saw those attempts to impose restrictions on something unbound by the framework of nature as little more than evidence of their master's egotism, although I couldn't deny that might have been a bitter prejudice of a have-not speaking. Sup? Good morning, Karen. Good morning to you, Kareen. Miss Fujimura approached the two of us. Kareen and Karen. Oh, okay, there we go. Yeah, it's tough, yeah. The boy looked between the two, confused. Yeah, you got it. Pain in the ass, right? The Kareen in Akihabara had this kind of grown-up, sexy feel to her. The one back home is a lot more whatcha! What's whatcha supposed to mean? You should be calling me Miss Fujimura. Kareen had drawn up one knee to strike a kung fu pose. I gave her a smack. Kareen lives in the Shibuya district. The me who lives there in the drawer... Wait. Hey, wait, what? What? Wait. Kareen and Kareen. Wait, what's this saying? Kareen and Akihabara had this grown-up sexy feel to her. The one back home is a lot more whatcha. Whatcha is supposed to mean you should be calling me Miss Fujimura. Kareen drawn up one knee to strike a pose. I gave her a smack. So Kareen lives in the Shibuya district. The me who lives there is a drawer for a Chinese restaurant. What does that mean? Kareen lives in the Shibuya. The me who lives there is a drawer for a Chinese restaurant. My master smiled gently. I wonder what it felt like to know there were different versions of herself active all over the city. Okay, huh? That's confusing, but I get what they're saying. A few elderly students were still hanging around the classroom, chatting amongst themselves. My master ushered us from the room, and we relocated to a terrace protruding from midway up the building. This was a leisure space, and it commanded a wide view of the sprawl of Akihabara. At this early hour, the sea breeze was light, and the sun was not too strong. It was cool enough that the shaded areas were still a little chilly. The distant rumble of a train slowly, smoothly pulling in from the oversea viaduct drifted to us from across the water, along with the faint toot of its horn. Beyond the horizon, where the railway vanished, lie Shinjuku and Shibuya. So, this child is the servant with the unknown master? That's right. I had already informed her about the situation in advance, but I took the opportunity to introduce the boy to her in person. To tell the truth, I already have a good guess as to his identity. Though he doesn't really react to what I say most of the time, he doesn't seem to be entirely all there. I took the plunge and told her about last night's discoveries, hoping somewhere deep down, this made up for the regret I felt at keeping quiet at Kundry's flight and the events that had followed. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, the French author, as I recall, and one of great renown. He was also an accomplished pilot and served in the Second World War. You believe this child's identity to be this Saint-Exupéry? The object of our scrutiny, the child in question, showed no reaction to the name. He took a sip of the freshly squeezed orange juice that Kareen had brought from a juice stand and pulled a face. Sour. His appearance is a poor match, even taking into account the age difference. You could sense my master checking records in the background and cross-referencing that with the child in front of her. I pressed on with my next hypothesis. I think he's the little prince. Don't you think he looks just like Saint-Exupéry's, Saint-Exupéry's illustrations? The Little Prince was an allegorical short story. It was the last completed work by Saint-Exupéry, who passed away at a young age. Whether online or in physical bookshops, one would inevitably find it in the children's book category, but it couldn't be more different to the fairy tales it rubbed shoulders with on the shelves. That said, nor was it something like the Bible, whose every line existed to be quoted or venerated. It was like a comforting presence, like a familiar friend at your side, always ready with a lighthearted quip or sobering anecdote. I would give it a read. For real. If you honestly, give it a Google right now. Give it a read. It's a short read, but it's a very nice read. Or so I thought anyway. So you're a prince, are you? Now that you mention it, he does look kind of regal. You think he'd be a good match for my Momi? She's a princess, you know. What do you think? Kareen pinched the boy's cheek, grinning wickedly. He turned his head away in clear discomfort. I decided to leave them to it and added to my master that last night the boy had answered my riddle with the keyword that only I'm going to say Le Petit Prince because that's what I see when I see Little Prince, but just me. The Little Prince would know. I see. She struck a contemplative pose as I continued. I'm aware that he doesn't look very much like Saint-Exupéry. That's why I'm wondering if he could be an author servant who's taken on the form of a character from one of his own works. I'm sure there are examples of that. There are indeed. Many authors' works leave a far greater impression on them than the men themselves. Many more choose such forms of their own accord. However, if you would permit me my personal opinion... She left a beat, pushing up her glasses. I would conjecture that Saint-Exupéry would project himself not onto the little prince, but onto the pilot who narrates a story. Yeah, that is something for sure. Because when they said that Saint-Exupéry was a pilot in World War II, I'm like, oh, like the very important character in the story. It was, after all, his own experience of crash landing in the Sahara Desert that formed the basis of the book. Yes, I suppose. She was right. Given the content of the book, it was an entirely legitimate criticism. She was saying the child was something fundamentally different, just some writer's servant with perverse tendencies and a strong capacity for empathy. While I hadn't been watching, the subject of our conversation had begun sipping on a honey lemon drink. He must have traded his orange juice with Karine. This was evidently more to his taste. He was smiling broadly. I've conferred with the Karen units in the other districts, but he does not appear to match any servant under our jurisdiction. I cannot even venture more than vague hypothesis as to his class. It seemed that as an AI, she was capable of communicating with her units in the background even while she talked to me. So he wasn't a lost servant who had wandered in from some other district. At the very least, we now know there was no record of Saint-Exupéry being registered as a servant anywhere in Mosaic City. Please, do not be disheartened, Erice. I do not mean to dismiss your opinion, the possibility remains. And just by having secured him, you've already done a wonderful job. I suppose. He seems to be stable, aside from his memory, so I'll fit him with a classification tag. For as long as he continues to reside in this town, I'll refer to him as the Little Prince, TBD. Brackets, TBD? Guess so. It would be a pain in the ass if he didn't have a name, right? Brackets, TBD. Karine cheerfully patted the Little Prince, TBD, on the head. About last night's incident. I straightened my back and tried to change the topic to my report of last night's events, and suddenly my master stood up from her seat, looking at me ruefully. I owe you an apology, Erice. A matter has sprung up that requires my urgent attention. Would you mind submitting your report as a brief text document? Of course. I felt relieved, but at the same time, more concerned. Whatever this urgent matter was, this was the first I've heard of it, and my master was not known for changing her schedule lightly. But what do you think I should do about him? That was my next point. I'm sorry to ask this of you. Would you mind taking charge of him for the time being? If his identity becomes clear during that time, all the better. My master's eyes narrowed into a smile as my mouth clamped shut. The already unusual situation had just taken a turn for the stranger. No way, no way, no way. Is that going to be a problem? My job and everything? No other individual in Akihabara is so equipped to tackle it as exceptional a case. To call you a specialist in the handling of servants would not be an exaggeration. It would! It absolutely would! My specialization was not the handling of servants, it was murder. Restraining the most villainous of servants and keep them under strict surveillance I could do, but I was not nearly so capable of attending the needs of a young boy, barely any different from an ordinary human child who he didn't even know his own name. Oh my god, please. Okay, so like I'm reading this, I'm like, please tell me when Erice is playable in Grand Order. Like, please give her anti-servant tech, because that just makes sense. Karine chipped in. Can't he just bunk at my place? What's an extra brother or two anyway? Quite a lot, I think. Karine's suggestion was extraordinary or responsible, but my master only inclined her head. My thanks for your hospitality, Karine, but I'm afraid that I cannot yet say what threat this child poses. I cannot permit him to reside with ordinary citizens. I'm telling you it's cool. I've got Momi, don't I? It'll be fine. Karine dug in deeper, and my master responded with another polite yet but firm refusal. In all honesty, it would have been a weight off my mind, although I wouldn't say the notion of Karine taking responsibility for a portion of my job didn't grate on me a little. Just as I was becoming aware of my own troublesome misgivings, a newcomer hurriedly approached the recreation space we were conversing in. Karen Fujimura, if you wouldn't mind, there's something I'd like to ask you. Oh no, it's the little girl. For some reason, I assumed it was a man. I don't know why. Iris, if you wouldn't mind, there's something I'd like to ask you. It was her, the girl in the hat from the front row. Oh, it was a hat, not a hood. Okay. She had run out of the classroom just before the lecture had ended, conversing with someone over her smartphone. She must have returned now that our conversation had ended. It's nice to see you, Haruko. Do you have a question for me about the lecture? That's right. I want to ask about the role of astrology during the Age of Discovery. A small squall blew through the terrace, and she clutched at her hat, pulling it down tightly over her ears. I saw my chance and hurriedly forced my way into the conversation, although really she had been the one who had interrupted us. Hang on a moment, I was already talking with Miss Fujimura. She glared at me in silence. Her brilliant peppermint green eyes glinted from behind a parting in her fringe. It was only thanks to the repeated interruptions from you and your servant that I didn't have the opportunity to ask the questions during the lecture. Well, I'm sorry about that, but, well, he's not exactly my servant. Is that so? My apologies. But as his guardian, you should be no more conscious of your responsibility to ensure he does not cause trouble for others in public spaces. Her motions, her gait, and even the way she was holding down her hat were clipped and precise. She was barely taller than the innocent child drinking juice by my side. Somehow she seemed many years his elder. Beneath that bright white gown I had seen so often in lectures, she was wearing a slightly old-fashioned bright yellow blouse. I'm positive. I've seen those clothes before somewhere. Now, where was it? You mentioned astrology, didn't you? If you're curious about the involvement of magecraft in human history, why don't you go to the library? You'd be able to research it as much as you wanted to. I'd intended it as a sincere and respectful recommendation, but instead she expelled a short, sharp sigh, and her attitude became palpably frostier. It's getting awkward. You're telling me to go to the library? That'd be far less efficient than asking an administrative AI, Miss Fujimura, directly. I would have thought that someone who went to the trouble of attending lectures would be more cognizant of the vast difference in value between the vague knowledge one can acquire through reference materials and the clear and concise explanations that can be gained through conversations with an expert in the field. And if you do not understand that, then I must ask why you insist on wasting others' time with your indolence. What do you mean, indolence? Well, damn, kid's got a mouth on her. Things went from bad to worse. Now Kareen had taken an interest. If I left this alone, it could easily escalate beyond my control into an all-out brawl. She was free to pick fights, whichever fight she wanted, but I wanted to avoid any risk of worsening my relationships with other students and end up barred from attending. Go on, Kareen, cut it out. I'm not mad or anything. Wait a second, I'm sure... Kareen looked as though she noticed something. The girl hurriedly pulled her hat back down over her head. My master had called this girl Haruko, didn't she? I too have important matters to attend to. I really do have to hurry. I see. Sorry about all this. She'd come all the way to this terrace searching for my master. I wanted to show her some recognition of her dedication. In that sense, we were kindred spirits. If I'm not mistaken, you don't come to lectures very often, do you? If you wouldn't mind, I could let you borrow my old notes. If you're going to mock me, I hope you're prepared for the consequences. Did I say something wrong? How short was this girl's fuse? I desperately looked to Kareen for help, but she only shook her head as though to say there was nothing she could do. And in that moment... I think that's quite enough, Erice. Another newcomer, a woman who had not been in the classroom, strolled towards us, calling out to me with uncomfortable familiarity. Her footsteps clacked on the floor as she arrived. Welcome. Your arrival is earlier than I had expected. Miss Fujimura, who had been maintaining a position of neutrality in our argument, greeted her in an oddly forced tone of voice. It was your message that hurried me here, Karen. You said that I might have the opportunity to see something interesting. She was dressed in a vintage black sailor uniform with long silver hair that was left to hang freely. I knew this woman who looked so out of place in Akihabara, who clad herself in elegant shroud of bygone days. I saw her in the title there. Chitose? What are you doing here? Now it made sense. Karen's urgent manner must have been her. The girl in the hat had caught my murmured whisper. Chitose? What kind of civilian would directly call on municipal administration AI without an appointment? I heard the rushing sound of an intake of breath, and she turned sharply back to the round of the woman once more. Now that they were standing face to face, her small frame meant that she had to crane her neck to look in her eyes. You aren't Manazuru Chitose, are you? The stigmata? Oh my god, what does this mean? I am indeed. It's been a while since I heard that name. The girl let out a whimper. How could this happen? Her reaction was so violent, I thought for a moment that they might be about to duel it out on the spot. In sharp contrast to her brief reverie, now she was tripping over herself to be polite. She was scrambling backwards 3 paces and lowered her head woodenly. Her ears were glowing bright red. From the glints I could catch through her bangs, her cheeks were similarly flushed. One of her fingers brushed across the side of her hat. With a swish, it folded in on itself and collapsed into her headband. Oh, that's cool. Oh, that's cool. You can press the button and the headband hat. Yeah, that's sick. Now, with her face now exposed, she bowed her head once more. I apologize wholeheartedly for my insolent stigmata. Chitose only shook her head quietly. You had business with Karen, did you not? I do not mind waiting a little. It was nothing. Certainly nothing of consequence next to your duties. She was so stiff and anxious now, her haughty demeanor not 2 minutes ago seemed like a distant memory. It was actually a little adorable, although in fact I found people's tendency to become so ill at ease in Chitose's presence rather hard to deal with. For her part, Chitose might have been responding amiably, but that should not have been mistaken for warmth or compassion. Her gaze fell upon the boy seated at our table, and for an instant, her eyes were those of a serpent that had found its prey. Yes, that's the boy, she said, although she was talking to herself. I can't tell which class his saint graph is. I suppose the world is full of surprises. I confess my interest was aroused, but I couldn't suppress a sadistic curiosity. What reaction would her gaze stir in him? Would he show awe, animosity? Would he completely ignore her as though erasing his own existence? But instead he smiled, like a shining star, a clear window straight to the heart. Silence reigned for a second, and then Chitose smiled back at him thinly. Next to me, I felt the girl with the hat flinch, and then her expression relaxing into a slightly mischievous smile. She approached me and laid a pale white fingertip on my shoulder. I charge you with monitoring this child, Erice. Understood, I muttered. She gave a small shrug at my disgruntled response. It looked like our conversation was over. Once Chitose had made a clear decision, my master would obey it. I stood up from my seat, bowed to my master, and accompanied the boy from the terrace as I'd been instructed. Who the hell was that? Kareen asked breezily once we were in the corridor. Gave me the creeps. This is once I was grateful for her laid-back demeanor. What's up with you anyway? Didn't you have something to ask Karen about? You sure you're just okay leaving like this? It doesn't matter. Let's just go. I put the building behind me as though I were running away from something. Okay. Wait. Hold up. Are you... Wait. Let's go back to the start again. Okay. That one on the... Okay, so yeah. We got Haruko, Karen, and then the stigmata, but... Hold the phone. Hold the frickin' phone. Yeah. Is that meant to be Galahad altar? And if so, that raises several questions as well. Okay. Interesting. Okay, well, let's jump back ahead to where we need to go. How do I just jump to where I need to go? Can I go just bookmarks? Oh, there's bookmarks. Frick, I should be using those, huh? Okay. Let's just... Well, I don't want to zoom out. Well, actually, if I zoom out, I can get there really quickly. So we are on page... Let's just see here. Yeah. Huh. The implication here is very interesting. I guess we'll learn in the future. Maybe this is a preview for the next one, but we'll see. We'll see. Anyways, okay. Real talk. I'm really enjoying this. I think this world is super cool. I think this world is really cool. Like, more so than, like, a lot of Fate stuff. But even just the fact that it's, like, referencing stuff that, like, I don't know. Like, it's bringing up all sorts of stuff, new stuff about, like, how servants work, and oh, it's so good. So I'm greatly enjoying this, and we'll see next time for chapter 2. They don't have titles, so I'm not really caring about it. But yeah, I love this. Oh, it's so good. I'll see you guys next time for that then. So we'll see you then. Enjoy the more chapters in the future for sure, because sadly it's like I'm gonna be doing this book and then I'm gonna do the event and then I don't know when I'll get to the next book, but we'll see. If people really like this, because the first part hasn't gone up yet, I might like just jump right ahead there, but we'll see. I haven't decided. Anyways, thank you all for watching. Bye guys.